part 4 of The Last Little Cat. Do you remember in part 3 where he'd made it to? He was going down a row of houses and he was at the 3rd house now, and the man left him there. Nobody in the 3rd house came to the door, but the big yellow cat that lived in the 3rd house came home. It saw the little cat on its porch. It flattened itself, and it came so stealthily and so sneakily on its padded sneak feet, the little cat never saw it until it pounced. In a great scare, the little cat spat off the porch. The big cat leaped down from the porch after it, and it chased the little cat out of its yard and into the 4th yard and up a big tree. The big cat came right up the tree after the last little cat, and the little scared cat had to keep climbing and climbing on and up to the top of the big tree. Still the big yellow cat kept on climbing after it. The little scared cat crawled out on the highest limb in the top of the tree until at last the limb got so thin it bent down and swayed and shivered. That scared the big yellow cat. It backed away into the tree. It backed all the way down the big tree to the ground. Safe on the ground, the big cat stayed under the tree. It yowled wicked warnings up into the tree for the little cat never to dare to try to come down again. The last little cat clung to the tiny shivering limb. The voice of the big cat came up from the ground, and the ground was very far down. The little cat looked down into the darkness under the tree, and down was so very far down. The little cat dug its nails into the bark and clung to the high shivering limb, and the voice of the fierce yellow cat came up from the ground in the darkness. I'll show you. In the 3rd house that was now next door, even with the television running and turned up loud, they heard the yowling warnings of the yellow cat, and now they opened the door. The door opened wide, and the yellow light shone out of the house for the yellow cat. The cat went in through the bright, wide-open door. Then the door closed, and the little cat clung to the limb in the darkness. Later, much later, in some hour of the night, the silver moon came out. The moon shone down on the top of the tree and the last little cat. The moon made the whole top of the tree light and silver. The little cat looked up at the moon, and the moon was a white, milky bowl in the sky, and the last little cat cried a soundless cry up at the white moon. The little cat cried at the light of the moon that shone in the top of the tree, but it did not dare go down the high tree, for under the tree was the darkness. The darkness was under the tree, and the darkness was down, ever so far down. And then the moon dipped away into the clouds, and then all was darkness. At last the moon came out of the clouds, and when once again the moon shone, the little cat dared. By looking up at the moon and the light of the moon, the little cat dared. The little cat let go of its cramped hold on the high, shivering limb, and the little cat began to climb down, all the time looking up at the moon. When the moon went away into the clouds, the little cat stopped and clung wherever it was. But all the while the silver moon shone, the little cat dared to climb down, for the moon was a white, milky bowl in the sky, and a white, friendly light. Then the moon at last was gone, and did not come to shine again. The morning came. The cold and the dark of the night changed to the cold and gray of the morning, and the last little cat was halfway down the big tree. The little cat rested from all its hard climbing by hanging over a branch on its stomach halfway up the tree. In the early gray morning, the door of the 4th house opened wide. A woman in pajamas let a fuzzy puppy out and closed the door. The puppy came on alone into the yard. The puppy came to the tree. The little cat hung with its head down and its little tail down over the branch, but up came the stub of the pencil tail at the sight of the puppy. The last little cat was so glad to see the puppy, it quite forgot it still was halfway up the tree. It wriggled free and let itself fall down to the ground and the puppy. It landed on its 4 little paws before the surprised little puppy, and it touched its nose to the nose of the puppy. The pleased little puppy was as delighted as the little cat was with him. He wiggled and waggled, and they touched noses again. The puppy slobbered the little cat with his very wet tongue. The little cat scrubbed the puppy with its little tongue, rough tongue, and they were friends. But the door of the 4th house opened again. The woman in pajamas sleepily called to her puppy. The puppy went storming away to the woman, but right behind the puppy, the last little cat stormed away to the woman too. Together they stormed through the door and into the house over the woman's bare feet. The sleepy woman was looking down at her feet. Her sleepy eyes became saucer eyes. She opened her mouth as wide as a saucer. She screamed up the stairs, "John, John, come down! A cat chased our puppy into the house! John, John, come get this little cat out of our house!" "There's a cat in the house," she said. A sleepy man came stumbling down the stairs and grabbed the cat and opened the door and dropped the cat outside the door. "Wherever you belong," he rumbled sleepily, "you don't belong in here." And he closed the door. The last little cat sat outside the door and cried to itself. It opened its mouth to cry to itself, but no sound came to make the cry, not even to itself. And it was early in the morning, long after the moon, and long, long, long before the warm sun. But the cold gray morning was wearing on to the sun. The morning was waiting slowly for the coming of the bright warm sun. But the last little cat did not know. It did not know that the sun came again every day in the morning to warm the world and little cold cats. The little cat sat crying to itself. The last little cat could not hear itself crying, but it heard another crying, a crying and a calling in the yard 2 houses away. In the 6th yard, 2 houses away, a woman was calling, "Kitty, kitty, kitty," and she called over and over again, "Kitty, kitty, kitty," into the cold gray morning. What do you think the kitty will do?